Hi, I'm Dr. Angela Servis from Eden Clinic, and I'm going to be talking this evening with Dave, who is going to be kind enough to share a little bit about his experience of his journey on TRT. So Dave, can you talk to me about, just tell us a little bit about what got you to considering your testosterone levels and how this journey really started for you?
So with the experience in everything I've had to date and where we currently are with the TRT journey, it kind of started out as I think most males do, in the gym, probably 17, 18, training really hard. At least I believed I was training really hard at the time, and I was watching other people gain a lot quicker than I was.
Right.
In at the time, completely innocent, had no idea what it was going to be, what they were doing. I assumed it was diet, it was training, it wasn't. Eventually got talking to the right people in the gym. I know a lot of people have been there, and started a journey taking testosterone probably the wrong way, at the wrong age, doing the wrong things with it. Luckily for me, I didn't go mental on it, but it was enough, I think, to cause some damage to the body. I would call it receptors, but it has damaged the body somehow. Through my 20s, it wasn't really a problem. I never picked up on anything. I was strong, fit, healthy and well. I did bits on and off now and again, but nothing extensive, just kind of dabbled with it, enough to sort of just keep me recovering and training hard. That's all I wanted. But it turns out that it did have quite a negative impact. I obviously know that now. But it wasn't actually until I lost my dad last year, we had a bereavement in the family, and my mood was very low, to the point I had to go to a doctor to speak to them. Ended up being prescribed antidepressants at the time. Luckily, it's when I met you and we had the conversation around them, and we discussed going on to TRT, and the kind of the rest from there was history. But the biggest change for me going into the TRT world was ultimately the mood and how I felt at the time. Very, very low point in my life. Felt very down and depressed. And I'm pretty sure within 2 weeks, I think I came back to you and was really surprised at the mood lifting, the results. It was phenomenal. I felt so much better. What I just class as normal. I think it had been such a period of time where I'd not felt normal. To then start the course and get and feel normal again was great.
I remember you saying that the impact of what had happened with your dad, and when your dad had passed away, had just sort of reduced your capacity to cope and manage all of that. And I remember sort of obviously going through the process of doing the testing with you when we found out that you did have quite a significant testosterone deficiency. And then you responded quite early in the journey. For some people it's months, and it can be very different according to different people, their experience of it. And you talk us through some of the changes that you noticed early on.
It did, granted that I have seen and read a few areas that it does take 4 to perhaps 6 weeks to start to feel things. Genuinely for me, placebo or not, 2 weeks in, I did start to feel, I felt a lot better. I didn't need to take any other medication. I think I noticed it first from my capacity to deal with my business, with my responsibilities, my accountabilities in life, and also be able to still train, recover, just to keep on top of that. This was an absolute game changer. And I think the biggest impact that it's had on me personally is that cognitive ability to be able to just deal and process with the day-to-day a lot easier. Things just become more clear, and it's much easier to sort of deal with. Whereas I was getting very burnt out very quick, to the point I think it's probably fair to say every few months I was coming home from work on a Friday and being physically sick, where I just felt so run down. That's never happened since, and we're sort of 6 to 12 months into this journey now. You
talked a lot about mental clarity with me, and I think it was, you were saying that you had the more capacity to be able to deal with more, and I think that, from your explanation of it initially, was that, that life-changing event of your dad's passing really sort of highlighted it and everything, but actually seeing the improvements in that sort of very early on was really good to hear about. So you sort of mentioned about the brain fog sort of lifting and the mental clarity. Were there other changes and things that you saw sort of later on down the time? You don't necessarily need to say time frames, because one thing I will say is that from my experience, that time frames are really different and very specific to the individual. So sometimes people pinning down a time frame might actually almost make them feel like they're not achieving the goals and things like that, and they can be really specific to the individual. So I mean, your experience, what was it apart from the mental clarity and things?
Obviously, there was a big step change in physique, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
I noticed my strength was in genuinely the best way I could compare it was almost as if so I'm 35.
Yeah.
It was almost as if I was 20 again.
Right, okay.
So I genuinely felt changes in libido, recovery, strength. It was quite a big step change, and almost to the point where I was using testosterone wrongly in the past. Yeah. It reminded me of almost that feeling, but in a positive way. It just didn't have the negative side effects to it.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to talk about, because what I never wanted to do was bang on about the actual physical gains from this. There's such a stigma around TRT to the point I obviously wasn't even going to do this and have my face exposed.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to get the message out there that this is no different to, say, a female taking HRT. We are optimizing my testosterone levels within the body to make them optimal, so I can perform as I should.
And I think that's a really interesting word that you use. So when you look at the Americans versus UK doctors and sort of TRT practitioners, they'll talk about the difference between optimization versus replacement. And in the UK, we can be a little bit more nervous about talking about optimization, because we should only be replacing what was already there. And to a degree, you know, what we're trying to do is create a healthy person who's got a healthy testosterone level to manage with the challenges that life's throwing at them. And I think it's really interesting, because I think I have quite a lot of patients who kind of are a little bit embarrassed when I say, you know, how's training going? They're like, yeah, really good. And they kind of feel like they need to hide that as if it's something to be ashamed about, because
I think first review, you asked me that question, and being honest, I didn't want to say too much on it, purely because I didn't want you to think,
this is why you're here.
This is why I'm here. But to put it into perspective, I was genuinely, I felt suicidal, like during dealing with that. It sounds extreme. I don't think I've ever acted on that, but I just felt, there was days where I'd wake up and I'd feel like, oh, what's the point in this? I've got 2 young kids, a family, I've got like responsibilities, and to wake up feeling that way for weeks and weeks, to the point that became normal, isn't good. And I know for a fact, if I'm going through that, there's a lot of men out there that are going through that. So I'm hoping that this will kind of break some stigmatism around it.
I hope so too. I think this is so important, and I do think men's mental health is a really challenging subject. I think that actually testosterone probably plays a really big part in men's mental health, and it isn't discussed enough. And actually often guys who don't necessarily seek out medical help very much will go to the GP, they might get offered an antidepressant when actually they need something much broader. And I know you were slightly nervous about coming on because you weren't sure about how it would be judged and how it would be perceived. And that in itself is really sad, because again, you know, I think in a lot of other circumstances, if we were looking at something that impacted women's health in so much, then actually they would have a really big platform. They would be encouraged to shout about it. And we're not quite there yet, I don't believe, across the board with men's health. But I do think that individuals taking the time to come out and share their experiences, to also be so candidly open about, you know, how bad things were, and about the journey that you've been on. I think it's really important, so that hopefully, like you say, there are other guys out there who might be sitting on the edge of things and not quite sure about whether or not to take the tests and whether or not to find out more information. So thank you.
I think one of the biggest, one of the nicest things I'd seen, it happened in the past few months, to be fair, through training and gym and just mixing with different people who have potentially been through this or are going through this as well. It's really nice to be able to have that engaging conversation with them, see how are you getting on, they're doing this. And it's nice when people almost like come out and they're like, oh no, I'm doing this, I've done this 2 years now, and look at, I think this is brilliant, that's what it should be. And it is, I think men are for this, it's just the stigma around it is the challenge with it.
And it's normalising the discussion. It's normalising making sure that guys feel that, you know, how many guys are there out there who have been solo and that haven't made the decision that you made and been able to get the help you did. And it's, you know, it's a really scary thought about that. But actually, you know, there are so many places now that you can go out, you can get your levels checked. There's so much cool information out there as well on the internet, and YouTube is a wealth of information and misinformation in places. But, you know, there's a lot of information out there, and even just having that conversation with your friends and sharing that information is fantastic. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate everything you shared today.
No, not a problem. No, if it helps someone on their journey as well, it's that's the main thing for me personally. No worries.
Fab. For any more information, please check out the links below. You'll see my website in the link below, and via that you can get book in for a review, or I do remote consultations in the UK or in person.